Excellency Dr. Kalam, Dr. Sarabhai, Ambassador Singh, and Esko and dear colleagues, I will leave that judgment that Esko just let out in the public for the public to make and for the public to demand if they want, but I will not answer that question. So in the US, you have the privilege of taking refuge under the 5th Constitutional Amendment, so I'll take the 5th on that one. My colleague, Vesa-Matti, talked a lot about the creation of information, which is relevant to Finns. But there is a quality about information which separates information from data. Information is data endowed with knowledge and with relevance. And it is the two quantities of knowledge and relevance which essentially influence and help human beings convene their energies towards informed action. So my presentation is going to be about action. And as Shakespeare said, action is eloquence. So with the foundation so firmly set by my colleague and the India program before my coming to Sitra, we had a background of information about India. But we needed to transfer that momentum. We needed to create the initiative for action. And in doing so, we held for ourselves 3 standards. The first was we wanted to broaden out the discussion to a level which was non-governmental, where various actors within the Finnish landscape as well as the Indian landscape had an opportunity to interact. The second thing we wanted to do was we wanted to amplify the weak signals which emerge as possible areas of collaboration, but they were not clearly understood. And that is where the dialogue essentially happened, and that's where action happened. And the final thing we wanted to do was to impart a transferring momentum. So as the Sitra program culminates, we needed to find actors within India and in Finland who would take this program forward. So with that, I'd like to get quickly into my presentation. How do you define India? 1 billion people. I felt, and my Indian colleagues and friends here, I hope you will agree with me, but I had the privilege to be singularly able to define that. I felt that in defining India, I think one of the firmest definitions of India are the values of India. It is a nation which has been founded for years and years, not just post-independence, but even before the subjugation by the British. Freedom of speech, the right to justice, and true knowledge as the source of the well-being and the well-being of the human condition. So our seminars and interactions with India and Finland were titled specifically along dimensions which will help you interpret India. So the first seminar we held was essentially to repeat the foundation on knowledge, but also to provide a framing reference for you to view India. And it was titled Values of India. And these 3 pillars of our societal values were essentially elaborated by some credible Indians. Indians who have not been accidental, rock stars because of the privilege of birth, but those who have actually done hard work and who have actually defined these elements. So freedom of speech was an area in which we explored in India. Dr. Arun Shourie talked about the role of freedom of speech. The right to justice. Mr. Soli Sorabji, our ex-Attorney General, he talked about that. And the knowledge as a key to Indian ethos was discussed by Dr. Sam Pitroda, the chairman of Knowledge Commission. So we essentially defined that throughout, as Esko mentioned, India is such a diverse country, but at the end of looking at the values of India, we tried to define the core competency of India with all the diverse parameters, but these 3 pillars that integrate India, a big continent, into one nation. So the core competency of India was laid as managing diversity, I think, was something that came out as the core competency of India. Many ethnic groups, many religious groups, many languages. The next event was India is growing at a percentage of about 9% economic growth per year. And it creates a dynamic which is both favorable, but it also imposes an economic load and environmental load on our nation. And since we are not isolated, it also imposes a load on the globe, the planet Earth where we live. But we cannot address all the issues. So we decided to focus on some of the most compelling emerging problems. And I don't want to give that away, but any guess what this was? The biggest health hazards and the aesthetics of neighborhoods. It essentially was urban waste. India is going to sink in her own urban waste unless and until we proactively decide to manage it. And Finland has competencies here, and we need to work together to address this issue proactively, not wait for the problem. The third program that we had, a seminar, was titled Empathic India. Empathy is a key human sentiment that makes us humane, makes us human. A feeling of goodwill, a feeling of pain when somebody else is pained, not when we are pained, not when our own family is pained. Healthcare in India is a huge problem. 600 million Indians live below the poverty line, and they don't have access to primary, secondary, or tertiary healthcare. How do you solve this problem? This is a problem that needs to be solved. So we propositioned the problem, we structured the problem, and we had experts from India and from Finland discuss this and propose solutions and enable responses so that we may have some kind of a framework to address a problem like 600 million Indians without healthcare. I don't think I would be alone if I said healthcare is a universal human right. I'm sure one of these days it'll be universally recognized that it is a human right. The final seminar for which you are here is Inclusive India. Inclusion is a theme which is so fundamental to competitiveness and sustainability that I tried to define. And our two guests, Dr. Sarabhai and Dr. Kalam, will talk about inclusion. But when I had to think about inclusion and define the roots of inclusion, I felt that unless in your heart there is nonviolence, you will not have the ability to include. Think about it. And I think nonviolence in all our endeavors is crucial to sustaining any kind of action, any kind of relationship, any kind of collaboration, or any kind of growth. And I feel that without inclusion, sustainability is just a slogan. It's just a slogan. And this particular program is going to wrap around the earlier three programs and present India as the first country that is going to emerge, I believe and I hope and I aspire, in the polity of developed nations, as Dr. Kalam's vision propositions in 2020, but a nation that has not left anybody behind in its march to that kind of success. And that is our aspiration. So finally, I started this whole thing about the essence of India. What is the essence of India? I think we are warm, we are genuine, spontaneous, responsible, but essentially it is a nation of free people, not subjugated. We are a free nation. We are an emerging nation, but we are working on it. We have our challenges, but we are essentially free. And that essentially is the essence of India. And without much ado, a lot has been said about the eminence of Dr. Kalam, but I would only like to say that as an itinerant Indian who spent 23 years abroad outside India, from my eyes when I see Dr. Kalam, and I think I speak for most of us Indians here, I think the two things that stand out about Dr. Kalam, he has so many firsts in his life, but I think the most essential first about Dr. Kalam is I think he's the first Indian in post-independence India who has the love, affection, and admiration of a nation in almost similar lines that Mahatma Gandhi had. And that and I feel that it is the reason for that love is because I feel, and forgive me but this is a personal opinion, but I feel he is the first Indian leader who has demonstrated exemplary integrity. And I feel integrity is the fundamental privilege of power and of eminence. And it has been demonstrated as a role model throughout Dr. Kalam's life, but even more so as a constitutional leader of India. So I'd like to invite Dr. Kalam for the keynote address. Thank you, friends.